Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Mary Alice here. Gosh, I think this is our fourth time together. This is awesome. We're moving right along. I hope you are having a great day. And I know many of you may watch the recording of this because the timing for you isn't the best because I'm here 10 a.m. Pacific time. So I understand. I get that. I just want to go over what we started doing because we started talking about childhood traumas and what happens. We talked about how we operate as human beings and what happens when when we are traumatized and what goes on in the brain and in the mind. And then we talked about the mind. We talked about paradigms. And I want to get back to that before we jump into emotional IQ, because I think just a few more things I want to talk about, because our emotions reside in our subconscious, and the brain is very effective in getting those emotions moving throughout us. We'll talk about that too in just a second. But if you remember, I want to bring this back up because I did something different here. I showed you this drawing that Dr. Thurman Fleet created in the 30s. And get my glasses on here. Hi, Sherry. Good morning. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. This is awesome. I was just going back and talking about what we had started and where we've been and where we're going. And I do want to jump into emotional IQ because I think that's probably a huge factor in how we can not only conduct ourselves in life, but have a better outlook and a better mindset for ourselves. But I wanted to go back to this drawing of Dr. Fleet's that Bob Proctor shared with me. So what I added was all this, I like school, teachers, religious upbringing, siblings, parents, relatives, and how everything within newborn to about 7 years old goes right into the subconscious. It goes right down in there, right in there. And there's no way to deflect it. The brain isn't developed enough to deflect anything. So everything goes in our subconscious. And what I want to talk about also is the importance of understanding the paradigms that develop. Now, like paradigms, and I mentioned on Monday, are the collection of ideas and belief systems of everything and everybody around us that goes in us in the subconscious. And then depending on our own little personality and environment, what we make of those things, right? What do we make of all these things that go inside us? And many times, just as kids, we just kind of go along with everything. We just have to go along and see. Trace, hi, friend. So we have to go along with whatever is put in us. And remember, as children, we don't know how to figure things out. If we're in a dysfunctional home, nobody is around us explaining anything, right? Telling us it's not your fault. This shouldn't be happening to you. You don't deserve this. So, pardon me. I've been struggling with a little frog in my throat, trying to get it out. If I start croaking like a frog, you'll know why. So we create these paradigms, which is our mind. You know, our mind is made up of a whole lot of things, a whole lot of belief systems, a collection of stuff. And I think I also gave, well, before I do that, before I talk about a sense of communities and belief systems, I want to finish this thought. So we have our mind and we have all these paradigms within us, okay? And they're kind of embedded in us. That's just what we know, right? As children, that's just what we know. And that's what we kind of have to go along with until when we get a little older and the conscious mind begins to take place, develop, and we can see life a little differently. And we can make little assessments for ourselves, like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's fun. My mom gave me a birthday party. That's fun. They do birthday parties. That's awesome. And we can see what agrees with us and what doesn't disagree with us. For example, when I was young, I'm terribly afraid of my father, and it was a chaotic home. And, my mom, we lived in upper middle class living. I mean, when there used to be upper middle class, right, in America. And we had a big house, and, from the outside, it looked pretty cool. People just didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. So for me, I had this structure built in my head of what families must be like, because this is all I knew. There were some good times, happy times, and terrible abusive times. So there was a mix for me in my life. And I had developed this belief system that, men are terrible. They're just, fathers must be very mean. All fathers are mean. And I remember being a kid, and I'll never forget, I was about 7 or 8, and I go over to my friend's house to play, who lived down the street. And I got really scared when her father came in the room. I was like, oh my gosh. I thought, all men were mean and angry and abusive and hurtful. But her father was so nice and friendly, and introduced himself to me and asked me about myself. And, oh yeah, I know your family. They live down the street, and so nice to meet you, and very friendly. And so for me, that was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. And so I had that input into my conscious mind. So I'm like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. This is good. And that made me happy to know. And I think when I go back in time, I realize that's why Leave It to Beaver was one of my favorite shows, because even though I watched the reruns, because it aired when I was a lot younger, but I would watch the reruns, and I was always amazed at how nice Beaver and Wally's parents were. They were logical and nice. And even when they got scolded by their father, so to speak, he did it in such a way that made sense, and he was stern but respectful. And that just blew my mind. That blew my mind. And so that was another input for me, a positive input about, oh, this is how it could be. This is cool. This is cool. So when we're children and we're building these paradigms, we don't even know we're building them, really. We don't even know. We're just going along with the program, right? Until, again, we get a little older, the conscious mind begins to develop, and we can start making assessments for ourselves. And depending on your personality, you will perceive things in ways that will suit your paradigm. And other times, we'll see things like they're brand new, and we go, oh, that's cool. I like that. Or we'll go, oh no, I don't want that. That's not cool. I don't want to be around that person or that situation. And that's a good thing. That means the brain is developing and the conscious mind is developing for that child. And that's a good thing. Even though basically the paradigms are what are running our program, so to speak, as a child. I do want to emphasize, though, the spiritual DNA within us. I do want to emphasize that is always there. But if we're not taught that it's there, if we're not aware that it's there, that we'll know we don't understand it. But throughout our life, it's always going to try and make itself known to us. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I do hope this made sense to you about. I love this picture. It just makes so much sense to me. And here are 5 senses. Here is our true essence, who we really are within us. With our true essence, see, we're all unique. Even in a spiritual way, we're all unique because it combines with our personalities and our talents and our abilities, and it's really cool. Now, the other thing, I'm going to put my glasses on for a second. As humans, we have higher faculties. And these faculties I think I know these by heart, but our reason, memory, perception, will, intuition, and imagination. And if you think about those things, the way we reason, that's the frontal part of the cortex of the brain, where we can reason. And if we're often stuck in the primitive part of the brain, if we're often stuck in a lower kind of vibration, lower darkness of humanity, we don't reason very well. We don't think things through very well. And we can allow our memories to, depending on what our memories are, they can be a reflection of a reaction of emotion instead of a response. And our perception, again, can be tweaked and changed throughout our life. I bet we all have that, don't we? We all have moments where we can remember where we used to think a certain way when we were younger. And as adult, we're like, oh, I understand that much better. So our perception of ourselves, people, places, and things change, hopefully for the better. And we have a will. And for some people, some kids are described as they're strong-willed. This kid of mine is so strong-willed, and in some ways that's a good thing. They might be a little harder to maintain, but it's a good thing, because in life they can go far if that will is guided and nurtured appropriately, right? I mean, that's what's important to understand. And our intuition is always there. Everybody has intuition. We all have intuition, right? It's like the simple explanation is when we walk into a room and, we're meeting people for the first time, let's say, and you shake their hand and you kind of get a feel, maybe through their smile, because body language is incredible. And we can even respond to it unconsciously. We don't even know we're responding to body language. But some people have a very genuine smile and a twinkle in their eye, and we're like attracted to them. We're like, oh, I would love to get to know them. You want to spend time talking and getting to know them. And other people, you gauge right away that intuition is just like, nice to meet you, but I think I'm going to go over there, right? It's like you don't really want to spend too much time with them because you have a feel. It's not a judgment. That's the thing. It's not a judgment, like you're making a judgment because they look a certain way, although sometimes we do because of our paradigms within us. But it's that intuition. It's just like that feeling where nice to meet you. Maybe we'll talk later kind of feeling, right? You just tell. Or you can walk in a room where there's a celebration going on. And you feel the joy and you feel the excitement and everybody's happy. Or you walk in a room where there was a fight going on, someone arguing, a couple arguing, and you're like, ugh, you feel like you can cut the tension in the room with a knife. So that's what I mean. We can feel these things, and intuition it's just within all of us. Now, within our intuition as well, it's where we can create our boundaries. And we'll talk about boundaries in a little while, but our intuition helps us create our boundaries. And we're kind of born with boundaries. Children are born with their automatic boundaries, right? They know, get a toddler in a room and they'll tell you no, right? Their boundary is, no, you're not going to tell me what to do. Now, they have to be shaped and guided and nurtured, right? Little kids, because otherwise they'll rule the roost if left to their own devices. And they don't even know. They're responding by their intuition and the developing ego, right? That's things that they want and they can't have. And they're so determined, they do have a strong will. How many of us have seen a toddler, like headed toward something dangerous, like climbing on a rickety chair, and oh, nope, got to put you over here. And they go right back to that chair because they want to climb on it. They have a lot of determination. And that is always still within us. It doesn't go away. It gets pounced on. And the other day I mentioned boundary busters. Well, in my life, I had boundary busters. So as a kid, you can imagine, my father I was just a thing. I wasn't a human being to him. And so it didn't matter my boundaries or, leave me alone, get away. Any of that meant nothing. So I was, oh dear, there goes my internet again. Hang on. So sorry. It just went tweaky. So with my father, he was a boundary buster. He just kind of just laid my boundaries flat, and which gave me the impression also that I wasn't meaningful, I had no life, I wasn't important, I wasn't respected, which created that belief system and paradigm within me, right? Remember I said I was a big loser, being treated that way at home and then being bullied outside by a neighborhood person, which that story goes on. Please remind me if in time I don't tell you the rest of that story. That it's you won't even believe it. I still can't believe it. But anyway, so I created the perception of life and people and things and, about myself. Again, nobody was around me to tell me there was nothing wrong with me and these people were wrong. And that's what happens with children when they are in dysfunctional homes where there's no insight, there's no help. You might have that guidance system within you, that intuition, like I shared, like just telling me quietly, you're okay, they're in the wrong. And I hung on to that in my life. So I wanted to get back to because I got off on intuition. And I do that. I'll take a right turn down the road, but I'll get back on the main road. And here I am. So the last one of our higher faculties is imagination. And, that imaginative part of us is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And, it's like with my kids when they were growing up and they would put on plays, or my daughter would be a ballerina, or they would do pretend, or they'd do these drawings. And imagination is really deep within us all. But again, it can be twisted, and our imagination can become a fearful thing. Nightmares happen, or we have bad memories and then we imagine the worst. And, that can become a way of life for some people where, it's everything horrible happens to me, and this imagination of what could be and what might be. And they live in the what ifs and not in reality and not in the moment. So we have to be really careful and respect these higher faculties within us that can help shape us and help us live a really extraordinary life when we pay attention. So I'll just read those again. It's reason, memory, perception, will, intuition, and imagination. And if you want to take time at some point and just think about those and how within us, these are our higher faculties that should be honored and respected, and we can shape them in a way that is best for our lives. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I really do. I really do. So I just wanted to cover that about just kind of reenact that about our paradigms and the mind, because our emotions, that's where our emotions are seated in all that. They're deep in our subconscious, and they can be easily triggered. Right? They can. And many people, without knowing it, and I know in my life I was like this, it would be triggered and the brain goes into like the hypothalamus and the amygdala. Everything goes into place and the hormones start going. We start feeling these emotions and we'll react. And it's a split second, isn't it? It's a split second. And we react. Children do that, right? And that's normal. I mean, that's normal for a child because that's where they function. That's where their brain level is at that time in life. They react, and we help guide them and teach them about their emotions and feelings. And, some children have really big feelings in a little body, right? And this is just a side note. I'm going to take a right turn here because I think it's important to understand that some children who are very extra sensitive and they just have these big emotions and they have these meltdowns and or these laughing fits even, right? And it's like the emotions just take over their whole body and they don't even understand what's happening. They can't even grasp it. And so, sometimes tantrums will occur. And we have to figure out as a parent, where is this tantrum coming from? Like, here's something that's really important to understand. Dehydration. Are they thirsty? When was the last time they had something nutritious to eat? Are they overtired? Have they had too much stimulation with screen time or TV time or whatever, or just events going around them? Sometimes it's just those things that can create an episode of a tantrum because they're so, I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry and tired and maybe annoyed, all my nerves are on edge, so it's like, even as an adult, we like have to pull it together sometimes. Well, children don't know how to pull it together. So they just have these meltdowns and, we just want to say, go in another room or don't act this way or, not until you settle down. And even though that makes sense, we need to guide them into doing that. Just like we need empathy at times in our adult lives where we need to just be listened to or maybe just have a hug, to calm us down, or even for ourselves, a self-awareness of, oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I skipped lunch today and I didn't bring my water bottle with me. No wonder I feel so awful. So as soon as we can take care of ourselves physically, you're going to notice there's a difference. And are you sleeping well? These are all common sense things, but things that we tend to neglect about our own physical well-being. And then we wonder why, even with a child, they have meltdowns because parents don't think of bringing a water bottle while they're shopping in Target or a nutritious snack. I can't tell you how many times I see like apple juice or animal crackers or things that just exacerbate the problem. They don't help the issue for a child who needs sustenance and nutrition and hydration. So anyway, okay, I went down that right. I'm going to go back on the main road now because I think we need to understand that our physical well-being plays a huge part in our emotional well-being. It really does. In fact, I was listening to a couple doctors talk about this the other day from the Cleveland Clinic, talking about how they've discovered over time how important even gut health is within a human body because it affects the brain, which affects our emotions, right? So it's just it's not even a side note. I think it's really important to understand that our physical well-being is really important to take care of and to be mindful of it as often as possible. Make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating nutritiously and getting the rest you need and having, going for a nice brisk walk or whatever form of exercise you enjoy. It can be in any form, right? Those things are really important to help us gain those moments of emotional control when we need it. And it's very important to understand that. Now, I have a lot of paperwork here because I brought out all my information because I loved studying this when I did. And one of the I think groundbreaking researchers in this is David Goldman, and he wrote the book Emotional IQ. He also wrote Social IQ. And I read it many years ago, and I just brought it out because I want to reread it again. And emotional IQ research shows it's more important even than intellectual, how smart we are and what our academic mind is. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of intelligent people who are so socially awkward or can't manage their own emotions, and they either shut them down, they just shut them down, or you could tell they're uncomfortable with their emotions. We need to make friends with our emotions, and we need to acknowledge that they're there. That's the other thing. A lot of people, my mother was very stoic in her life. And I understand that about her. I understand her personality. I understand why she became very stoic. And when you read about stoicism, it's not a bad thing necessarily. The great philosophers talked about it, and it talks about, it makes it even healthy for us to understand our emotions. When I say stoic, it can sound negative, meaning people are just, they ignore their emotions. They're just always like, like the queen, and they're just, carry on, and you ignore your emotions. We can't ignore our emotions. We have to understand where they're coming from. When we can understand where they're coming from, when we can understand our own triggers of emotion, what triggers you? Think about that. What triggers you where you just have this emotional reaction? And sometimes we just have to bite our tongue, right? We have to go, oh, I'm not going to say what I want to say. And we have this emotional reaction. And I know for some people, it's just outright anger. Boom, they go to anger, 0 to 10, and they just blow up. But they don't even know why, but their reaction is so strong, and that paradigm within them, whatever it hit, is just, they have to defend themselves, and they always have to be right. And, you're wrong. And so they have this effect of this anger, and that's how they react. Others react more maybe very intellectual and want to like just do a brain dump on what's happening, which doesn't affect the emotional response. It just kind of, it's like robotic in a way. And others want to run and hide. So we have to understand our emotions, and which helps us understand ourselves better and who we are uniquely ourselves. I know about myself that I am sensitive. I'm very sensitive, and growing up that way created a firestorm of me becoming codependent. And when we talk about codependency, I'll go into more detail, but I just became very codependent, and all my reactions were, well, I can't make them mad. I've got to do this. So I've got to keep the peace. I can't speak my mind. Always shutting myself down. And I would implode. I never exploded. I wasn't a person who ever, or rarely, it takes a lot for me to explode. I don't respond. I don't react that way. I implode. I take it on inside. And I'll talk later about the dangers of that. We need, let me put it this way. When I say we need to make friends with our emotions, we have to understand them, because they all mean something, and they're indicative of telling a story for ourselves. They're indicative of helping ourselves understand what's going on around us and how we are perceiving people, places, and things, right? I know I can think of times when our family, this is when the children were younger, we went to Hawaii a couple times, and that was one of the beautiful vacations we took. And I'll never forget standing on the beach in Kauai, and the sunset, I can't even describe it to you. It was so stunning. It was breathtaking. And it's a memory and a sensory and emotion that came up that just brought tears to my eyes, because it was so beautiful. And I couldn't believe I could see this beauty at that moment. And knowing that every sunset is different, and I'll never see that one again. And we respond emotionally to things. Music. How many of us love music? We have our favorite songs, and it kind of, it triggers an emotion within us, like sentimental. Maybe it's a love song that equates us with someone we love, or or the past. You know, I love Beatles and I listen to Beatles all the time. And it reminds me of when I was young and a teenager and, you know, what was I doing then and my friends. And it evokes a lot of wonderful things, right? And we can feel those things. We don't want to live in those. We can't stay there and live in those moments, because then we're not living now. We're not living presently. And many times people want to take a certain emotion and stay there and live that out over and over and over. And that goes for the negative emotions as well. And they get trapped in these negative thoughts and emotions. It becomes habit of thinking and feeling and believing, and they just keep recreating that in the now. They keep creating these negative feelings and responses and perceptions in life. The healthy way to be a mature human being is understanding what gets us. And when we can have those aha moments of when we're triggered, the first thing always is, do I need water? Did I eat something healthy? Do I need something healthy to eat at the moment? Do I need protein? Do I need to rest? Because again, our physical well-being is so attached to our emotional well-being. So always check that first, because then it'll give you more understanding of why you might feel raw at those moments. But when we look at our emotional reaction instead of a mature response to something, it sets us back. It keeps us stuck. It interferes with healthy relationships. There's so many people, and I can't wait to get to that topic of relationships and the codependent relationship, the addictive relationship, the trauma bonding relationship, and what does a healthy relationship look like? How can we help each other in a relationship? So awesome. But when we understand ourselves and our triggers, and we can help ourselves with those, whether we read books or talk to somebody, see a counselor, therapist, or maybe coaching helps, whatever might work for you, makes us all the healthier when we show up in a friendship, in an intimate relationship, because we know ourselves really well and we come fully present. And I want to say 100%, maybe it's 100% for that day, but we always will find things to work on, right? So let me read a few things here in my notes, because I think this will be helpful. Hang on, let me read my handwriting. Oh yeah, our emotional system doesn't have a reason to lie at all. Like, it doesn't make up things, but what it does respond to is what's already in us. So what we might think is truth really isn't. You know, we might think, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, they hate me, or whatever, and we're reacting emotionally to some statement that is actually benign, and we're taking it in a whole different way because of a paradigm we have with it. We have this belief system. It's not lying to us. It's just that we haven't taken the lie within us and recreated the truth of who we really are. So I just wanted to, I hope that made sense. Let me know if that makes sense to you. We need to have self-management. We need to be able to control our impulsive feelings. And that really is truly a mark of a mature person, right? When we can have control of our impulses. And that is the greater part of the brain that helps take over the primitive part. The primitive part of the brain is all about impulse, all about fight, flight, freeze, you know. And for many people, it seems to be more dominant than the God-given frontal part, the evolved part of the brain, where reasoning takes place and the analytical part of us takes place and impulse control takes place. And it's a muscle. Kind of have to practice it. It's like a muscle, I should say. It's not a muscle, but it's a part of the brain that we have to practice. We have to practice that impulse control. Now, we can think of the major, like the Marines, let's say, people in the military who go through weeks of horrendous training to get their impulse control effective, right? They get yelled at. They're put into 24-hour rigorous physical training. They're going through all this stuff to get that part of the brain under control where they aren't reacting anymore, but they can respond and they can think clearly, and they know better because they know, okay, 24 hours, this is going to be over. I'll get through this. And they talk to themselves and they can have that impulse control. They're being yelled at in their face by a sergeant and they just have to stand strong, being spit in their face with yelling, and they have to have that impulse control. That's the extreme, right? I mean, I can't say that I would master that if someone's yelling in my face, but I'd walk away, but they're not allowed to walk away. Because to me, that's abusive. But in the military, that's their training. So I see it differently. Okay. And the self-awareness is important, and to recognize our own emotions, like I just said, and not to judge them at all, but just recognize them, just say, okay, I tend to react this way. How can I do better next time? And whatever works for you, if it's like talking to yourself or journaling it or recreating a different scenario, do that. And the more we do that, we're exercising that muscle. And just love your emotions. Again, they're telling a story. They're telling a story for us of where we can grow and learn. And, even practice, people call it a spiritual practice, being more patient, being more loving, or whatever that moment calls for, and allowing that part of us to grow and to be more responsive than the reactionary of our emotions. And in social awareness, it calls for empathy, right? Emotion. We have to be empathetic with people, because how many of us have been through situations there's no empathy? Again, as children, if we're going through a difficult time and there's no one around empathizing or helping us through that time, we develop empathy. And I got to tell you something, more people who go through really difficult times in life usually are the ones who are the most empathetic and compassionate people, because they know what it's like. They don't want others to feel like they did. They are more compassionate, they are more caring, and they are more empathetic. And that's a wonderful thing, as long as it doesn't cross the line into codependency, which oftentimes it can. And we'll talk about that, because that means when it crosses into characteristics of codependency, it means the boundaries aren't there, the healthy boundaries. So, but yeah, social awareness is really important. That's why we all associate with maybe an organization that is meaningful to us, maybe that feed children, hungry children in your community, or in war-torn nations, or maybe humane society where animals, neglected dogs and cats and animals need help. So we have that empathy within us, and we have that care, which is beautiful, which is what the world needs more of, right? I think so. Also, this is a good one, relationship management, right? When we have control of our emotions in heated times, every couple has disagreements and whatnot, but in heated moments, of like having control over the emotions that are welling up inside us, because again, that's a habit. That's something that you saw your parents do, or an older sibling, or somebody who made an impression in your life, who acted that way and will take on, children can tend to take that on as their defense mechanism. They think, oh, it works for them, then I'll do that. So that's what happens. And this is where that impulse control can really be helpful, and to use our reasoning power, the faculty of reasoning and understanding the moment of, okay, I understand this is kind of getting heated, but let me understand their perspective. What are they thinking? Maybe they're not wrong. Maybe I have something to learn here, and so you can have a decent conversation rather than a blowout. Again, that's when you're working with two human beings who are wanting to be adult and mature in these interactions. Sometimes that's not often the case. Sometimes one person is really working on themselves and developing well and wanting to be more intelligent and in the now and present in conversations. The other person's not there, and so they're still reacting. That's kind of tough. I know that's a tough situation to be in. But hold your own and stay the course and take the higher ground, because you will always be better off for that. You always will be better off for that. And you'll also be a good example for that person and maybe others who might be around listening. Okay. I have more. Oh, there's so much here. And I'm going to take it on to Monday, because I feel this is so important, because the more emotionally stable we can be and responsive rather than reactive really does benefit our social interactions and our social well-being and understanding social IQ, which I think I'll bring that up on Monday. So, because that's just as important. It's so important when we're interacting with people. And the phrase, know your audience, I'll talk about that, because that's really important and specific. So emotional intelligence can be used in many different ways in our daily life, right? It includes being able to accept criticism and responsibility. Ugh. How many of us can accept criticism well? Meaningful criticism is much more easy to take, right? When you have a close friend, I have friends, I adore them, and I've known them for over 30 years. I trust them. And if they want to share something with me that they feel, I'll just put it this way, they want to kick my butt because I might have said or done something or whatever. There's a lot less of that, but early on, I trusted them. We trust each other with that. So I would take into consideration what they're saying and go, okay, I get it. I understand that. And so sometimes constructive criticism is really good for us. Sometimes the way that criticism is given to us is like not nice or over-exaggerated, right? And man, we want to react to that. We want to hold our own and we want to defend ourselves. And, those moments where it's just, don't tell me, how dare you kind of thing. And we want to get back at them and tell them all their horrible things. But it's in moments like that where if we can just have that control and understand that, where are they coming from? Oh, my boss, he just got a ticket on the way in. He's mad anyway, so no wonder he's acting ways. Use our reasoning power and thinking a little more clearly in these moments of maybe not accepting the behavior of the person, but just understanding where they might be coming from. And it helps the situation and it keeps us calm. Maybe there's a nugget of truth in what they're saying, but they're overreacting and over-exaggerating and figuring out, saying, I appreciate you saying that. I'll think about that. Thank you. And walk away, especially if it becomes really heated or maybe even verbally abusive. That's not acceptable. And you have your right to have your boundaries. So it's how we can accept criticism. How do we move forward when we make a mistake? in my earlier years, gosh, when I made a mistake, I felt horrible, and I was this failure because it went back to that paradigm of belief system of I'm a loser and I'm a failure and everything. And I remember someone showed me when I brought this up I can't remember where I was, but we were talking about this subject, like when we make a mistake or feel like we failed, and they drew this circle and they go, okay, this is you. Okay, this is you. And they put a little pin dot inside that circle. It goes, this is your mistake or what you perceive as a failure. That tiny little dot. That's not who you are, that tiny little dot. But your response is to make it like you are the big dot. You are the failure. You are the mistake, right? And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that made so much sense. That made so much sense to me, because it was like, I realized how I was overreacting in my own belief system of feeling like I was this big failure and a loser. That just because I made a little tiny pin dot mistake, I felt like I was the mistake. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that helps you if you tend to feel that way. We want to shrink away from our mistakes, but instead, it's taking responsibility. Maybe you need to go to someone and apologize, or maybe it's, I don't know, whatever the mistake might have been. Is it something you can make amends for? Is it something you need to clean up? Or is it something that you can just show up to that next meeting and with your head held high, knowing you fixed that mistake? Whatever. It's taking responsibility and getting back on track. And that's an emotional way of maturity, really. And not allowing that part of us that wants to go run and hide, right? Or defend ourselves, like making that mistake right. We know people like that, don't we? Who, I meant to do that, because they can't be wrong. So that's upsetting. Being able to say no when you need to. We're going to talk about that. All about codependency and not having very good boundaries, but understanding that sometimes we need to say no, and saying it in a way that's very polite. Saying, gosh, I'd love to help you with that. I think it's a really good cause. I just can't right now. I can't do it. My plate is full, but hey, maybe next time. Thanks for asking me. And then leave it at that. You don't have to apologize or give excuses. Your no is good enough because of who you are. Being able to share your feelings with others. This is key. This is important too, because sometimes we, oh, my shirt is all crooked. I'm getting all emotional here, aren't I? We have to find the right people to share our feelings with, don't we? We have to find trustworthy people in our lives. And I know with me in my younger years, I trusted the wrong people. I didn't understand people needed to earn trust. I was so young and naive and trusting the wrong people. So that's part of our emotional maturity too, and our own knowing ourselves really well and our boundaries is how to trust people and making, having really good friends. And many of us have really good friends. So working on getting good friends, and that's important in life. We have to do that. Being able to solve problems in ways that work for everyone. So it's being mindful of maybe a working situation, teammates, coworkers, family, maybe community or neighborhood. What is best for all, not just what's best for me. And that goes along with empathy too. Having great listening skills. How many of us have great listening skills? I know in my work and in my education, learning how to listen well and not react, not listen just to respond, not listen just to, say something back, but to really listen to somebody, especially someone who's sharing something very sensitive or something they've been through that's serious. the sharing their feelings, and you're on the other end, and you really need to listen wholeheartedly and not just to respond or react, but listen with empathy and with a good heart and not judging others. I think we'll all go to our grave learning that, not judging others. Because there's that's that primitive part. Like suddenly we want to, are we safe with this person? Is this going to be, there's this kind of momentary, quick assessment of others because of the way they look, maybe, or the way they sound. And that part of the brain is like, are you safe with that person? Is that person good? Or they remind you of so-and-so who was a terrible person. You know, there's that instant moment where the primal part of the brain will do that, but we can get to the front part of the brain, right? And learn to do better and not overreact, not be judgmental. So emotional intelligence is essential for good interpersonal communication. And some experts believe that this ability is more important than determining life success and IQ alone. And I think that's exactly true. You know, knowing some wonderful, beautiful, authentic people who are caring and empathetic and giving and wise, and they might not have degrees after, you know, PhDs or whatever after their name. They're wonderful people nonetheless, and they're all the better for it. Fortunately, there are things that you can do to strengthen your own social and emotional intelligence, and those are some of the things I shared. I'm going to leave it there because there's so much more information, and I feel like you're tired of my voice. So I don't want you to get tired of my voice. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions or a comment, let me know, and I'll take a second and see if anybody has anything they want to share, or let me know if this made sense, or do you want me to go over anything else? Just let me know. Even in the recording, if you leave a comment or a question, I'll be glad to get back to you on that. So, all right. Nothing. That's good. Okay. I hope this part of understanding our paradigm and where our emotions sit and live, and I'll talk about what the brain goes through when the emotions are alive and well, like fear and anger and or other love or whatever things that are hitting us hard in our brain. Oh, thank you, Sherry. Thank you. And I hope this made sense. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate those who showed up, and always, you're an amazing human being, and you are a miracle on this planet, and you matter so much in this world. You really do. And thank you again, and take care, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks, Sherry. I'll see you Monday. Have a good one, and share with your friends. Let them know too. I'd appreciate it. And take care. Blessings to you. Bye for now.